Just really blew my mind that I got like 3 amazing professors.
My name is Rick.
I'm Elizabeth Upton.
My name's Anthony Caldwell.
They work so hard. I think everyone deserves to have at least one class, I hope it's more than one, where you can just enjoy something.
A highlight of the class that I really enjoy is that students have the freedom to try to apply the tools to their own questioning.
This course gives you something that you learn that you may not know before, but also I think the environment should be conducive to learning that and not be, over the top.
Hi everybody, it's been pretty much forever since I've taken a vlog. So I'm on spring break right now from UCLA, and I just finished winter quarter of 2022, and so that's my second to last quarter at UCLA. A little bit scary, I'm gonna graduate soon. But I guess one of the reasons I'm kind of excited about graduating is because I don't really like school a lot, because school doesn't ever really seem to be useful in a lot of ways. I feel like school should really be about learning things you don't know, or like actually doing work that improves you like as a person or a student, rather than doing work that helps you get grades and A's. That's kind of useless to me. So I felt that a lot at UCLA, that I'm not really learning things that might actually be useful to me in the future, or like things that I want to do in my job. And I don't know if it's just like the classes in my major, but we study and read like lots of like academic articles. I mean, it's interesting to me. I do like my major, but it doesn't feel useful to me. So this past quarter, I actually had a completely opposite experience than pretty much any other quarter I've had here at UCLA and throughout college. So I wanted to talk about that in the video today and kind of share with you specifically about the 3 classes I ended up taking and give you an insight into what I think a college class really should entail. And maybe if you're a current or future student at UCLA, you can get some class recommendations out of this too. So it's just a little tangent. I'm an out-of-state student, so I pay a lot of money for tuition. So I was like, I feel like I have to take a lot of units to make this worth it, because that's a lot of tuition and I should get as much as I can out of it, right? Learn as many different classes as I can. But last quarter I took, I think 19 units or 20, something close to that, 4 classes. And it just turned out to be too much because I ended up not being able to go to office hours because of conflicts, and I didn't have a lot of time left for extracurriculars that I wanted to do and invest more time in other things that weren't classes. So I realized that maybe that wasn't exactly the best strategy. For winter quarter, I ended up enrolling in only 3 classes, especially because I'm also doing 2 part-time jobs right now and helping in a club that basically is like another part-time job that I'm not being paid for. So because I really wanted to have time to be able to invest into those other activities, I only enrolled in 3 classes, and it turned out to be the most perfect combination of classes like you've ever seen. So I just wanted to introduce them today one by one, and I got a little help from my professors. So the first class I took was COMM 131, which is called Computer Models of Communicators. I took this class because I'm a COMM major, and also because I have computing specialization and digital humanities minor that this will satisfy to help for like the tech humanities kind of requirements. So it kind of ticks off a lot of boxes for me. But I received the recommendation to take the class with Professor Dale from our COMM department advisor, Pia, and it was just a great recommendation. Professor Dale was really awesome.
My name is Rick, and I taught a class called Computer Models of Communicators, COMM 131. We covered an array of different ways in which we can build computer models to create artificial communicators. So we covered some theories, such as different kinds of algorithms that you can use, from rule-based systems to neural networks. But we also talked about ways you could actually apply them in industry, so creating conversational agents and systems. In agent-based models, building mass-scale systems, for example, of societies, or how ideas propagate over a network of people, and explore these models and try to apply them on your own problems, which is a highlight of the class that I really enjoy, is that students have the freedom to try to apply the tools to their own questioning.
When I first heard the title of the class, I have to admit my mind kind of just went to mass communication and like social networks and modeling society and how like communication flows from people to people. But we really covered a bigger range than that. We also went to the like kind of more micro interactions, interpersonal communication. And we started with chatbots and neural networks, and we talked about social robotics. And then we got to like agent-based modeling, which is more of what I was thinking of with like the mass communication. And towards the end, we even got to have a guest speaker from Cisco who works in data science to analyze ways to improve their AI assistant for their meeting app. And so Professor Dale was also really focused on giving us ways to connect what we were learning in class to industry and to grad school and whatever we would possibly be interested in next.
The final project really is completely and utterly open-ended, so I sort of hope students can come up with an idea that they want to pursue that links to their career interests or academic interests in some way, whether it's grad school or some kind of industry application or something. You know, I give students the default to extend one of the labs that we do in the class, and that's perfectly fine. But I have a very open mind to ways in which you might use these tools to explore a wide variety of issues that have like important implications for socioeconomic matters, or if you're interested in a technical question, or you want to gain some experience in some particular dimension of tech like UX or something like that. You can create a study using these systems if you like. And I'm very interactive, so I like to have emails and email exchanges and to discuss your project to try to fine-tune it in a way to make it as useful as possible. So to connect the scholarship and the actual design of these systems to something that hopefully has a kind of unique connection to your interests in your career. There's kind of hopefully a kind of almost portfolio item that you greet at the end of the quarter that you can take with you from the class and hopefully remember for a long time.
Overall, it was kind of one of those classes that combined computer science and humanities and get you coding a little bit, but it was also very accessible for people who maybe didn't have as much coding experience before to learn how to do a little bit of coding and to, you know, be programming something without having to go through learning a whole programming language first. And so I really recommend that to any of my fellow comm majors who are looking to get coding experience. This class was really great for that. I know I've taken at least one other comm class that was a little bit harder for my classmates to adjust to who hadn't had the programming experience before, because they needed to learn the coding language. So in terms of the coursework for this class, there was no midterm. There was one final project, but there was no final exam, and it wasn't even an essay in exam form either. It was seriously a project. And the other main assignment was that over the course of the quarter, he gave out maybe 5 or 6 different labs that you can do, and you only needed to pick 2 and complete them. And those are really well designed to help you incorporate what you learned in class and actually get a hands-on interaction with what we were studying. So for example, the very first lab was to build a chatbot, and Professor Dale has this entire interface that he programmed to have his students make chatbots on.
It's fun to try to find a balance in the content of the class, to sit between the social sciences and the computational sciences in just the right spot, that we can have a lot of interesting experiences actually building these computer models in class. And so it does have a bit of that dimension of programming up systems. So the rule-based system really is an interface that we designed in the lab here. You can actually, once you have a login, you can actually build a conversational agent. You start creating rules. So you can do a little bit of UX research as part of your project, or you can do a bit of chat design of the computational system, so you can see what it takes to fine-tune these systems to make them most compelling. It's a point-and-click interface, so you can kind of wire up the rules of a conversational system and then deploy it. So some students created an interactive game, which was really fun. Some students created just a complete conversational system that you can just have a casual chat with. Other students created something like a help desk system, so it kind of had an entrepreneurial flair to it, which was really interesting. And so in the system, it does allow you to get what's called a deployment link. So then you can share that link with anyone and they can interact with your bot, and then you can have them fill out a survey or have them give you feedback on how it worked out. So you gain real experience creating a kind of interactive system that you could feasibly deploy out in the world.
There's also a lab on neural networks that you could do using RStudio and pulling pre-written script from GitHub, so it was really easy for anyone who was just starting. And there were more research-oriented ones where you could just do a literature review as well, so it was less coding. Overall, it was really good because you could spread out the labs whenever you wanted in the quarter. You only had to do 2. You could pick the ones that interest you. So overall, really great learning experience. And that was really it. And besides giving, really mini, really easy quizzes each week just to check your, attending lectures, since it was still a hybrid format. It was just the quizzes, the labs, and the final project. Also, not that people in the future will really remember or care about this season of life, but this winter quarter at UCLA was really hard on a lot of people because initially we had to be online for 2 weeks and then come back on the 3rd week, and they extended it 2 more weeks, so it wasn't until the 5th week, and everyone was figuring out how to go back from online to in person, and there were all these complications. But the loudest consensus was that hybrid would be the best option for everybody, since there were people who legitimately could not come to class still because of concerns with COVID, and because we're all dying to go back in person and have a classroom experience. And I'll mention this later, but all my professors were really accommodating with that. So Professor Dale really adapted to the hybrid format. He came to campus and taught us in Kaufman Hall, and then he would have the recording from class to upload for people who couldn't make it in person for online. And sometimes he would even re-record because he was dissatisfied with the quality of recording from class. So he was really dedicated to making sure that everybody got all the learning materials. The second class that I took was a class on the Beatles. It was Musicology 68, and I took it as a GE. And yes, if you've watched my old videos, you know I had a really hard time transferring all my credits, so even though I'm a transfer, I still have GEs to complete. Luckily, this was the last one, and it was a really great way to finish my GEs.
I'm Elizabeth Upton, a professor in the musicology department. Please forgive the lighting. We're west facing and it's the afternoon. Musicology 68 is a big GE class on the Beatles. I've taught it for almost 10 years now. And I love teaching it. Its focus is critical listening skills and in giving students practice in identifying what they're hearing and then in interpreting how what sounds they're hearing affect their experience of music, which I think are skills that then can be useful for the rest of your life, even for listening to music that's not the Beatles. But listening to music that is the Beatles is joyful and exciting, and I'm really happy that so many people think so.
Professor Upton also guided us through all the history and context and culture behind what made the Beatles music what it is. So we got to learn about their musical influences in both Germany and America and India, and their different interests and a lot of drugs. And overall, I just learned so much I didn't know about them, because I think we all know some of their biggest hits, and I think most people do acknowledge that they are some sort of legendary group, but I didn't really understand to what extent until I learned the details about them. I didn't know that they were actors in movies, and one of the things that really surprised me was Beatlemania, because I hadn't really heard about the phenomenon before, but it was so interesting to me because it was wait, isn't this what girls in 2010 did with One Direction? Or girls today do with K-pop? So it was really interesting to see parallels to the music that I listen to and that I like. And so now I'm they're the originals. The
Beatles' career works really well in a 10-week quarter because they were recording for essentially 8 years. So that gives me some at the beginning and some at the end, and then we just marched through their career. And also their music started out much more straightforward and simple, and as they matured as artists, their music got much more complicated, and their engagement with different art movements got much more involved. Anything else about why I love it? Oh, students love it. And that it makes me happy because I teach other classes on medieval music, which I also really like. And I get a mix of music history students. Some of them like it, and some of them are like, why do we have to do this? And so in teaching a GE class on such extremely beautiful and exciting music, I don't get anyone saying, why do I have to do this? Even for people who say, oh, I don't like them, they're still responding to them.
Overall, it's just a great class because I went from not being able to identify their names and faces, I didn't even know all their names, to discovering all these crazy songs that I didn't know, because I think all their normal sounding songs are more popular, but they had some really crazy and experimental music in there too, especially in their later years as a group. Work-wise, again, I was so thankful for this class because it made my quarter so easy. There was a little bit of busy work, such as quizzes to check that you went to class or watched the lecture recording, and a discussion post each week that you had to, just go in the forum, answer the question as usual. They were kind of interesting questions though. But throughout the quarter, the only expectation was that you had to be attending discussion each Friday. And then, as is per course in GE classes, they hold your hand and slowly walk you through writing an essay. And so you get all the help and support you need to write a really, chill 5 to 6 page paper about how you personally experience listening to music, specifically a Beatles song and another song. So personally, being a senior and also a humanities major and having seen some gnarly papers in my time, that one was no problem, totally a breeze. And after that, she even took out the final exam, and it was just a final reflection on the class, like 1 page, 2 pages of like, this is what I liked about the class and this is what I learned, you know? So there was never really a test on what we had learned. You could just really just enjoy the music, enjoy learning. I was so thankful for that because it was genuinely interesting to me, and it wasn't like I had to learn it so that I could put it on a test and get a grade. Like that was like, oh, it really felt like, you know, this is what college should be. And just like learning because it's interesting and useful and cool.
So what do I like about teaching this class? The music itself is just fantastic. It's just full of joy. It's almost completely positive, which is really hard to say about any artist. There's something interesting in every one of the songs, and the sheer level of the quality of their work is really high. The next thing that's really interesting is they had the largest audience for media at that time. And as a result, many people heard their music, which means that many artists were influenced by what they heard from this. So once you're aware of what the Beatles did, you get echoes of it in all sorts of places.
Professor Upton was also really accommodating when we had the whole corridor kind of upturn and switch. The class had 400 people in it, so her response was, yeah, we are definitely not going in person and we will never be in person. So after the rest of the campus kind of went back to half in person, the Beatles class continued online, you know, with recordings, and the discussions remained online, so it was all very convenient. And I know a lot of people didn't go to class, and you could definitely still get the A because it was such an easy class. But I still went to every class because I really just genuinely found it interesting. And when would I ever get a chance again to like learn in detail about the Beatles and their career?
Last year, which was the first year I taught remotely, it was much more shocking. This year, I'm like, I know how to do this. If you're teaching a big class in a concert hall, which is where we would meet, you can at least see people. You can't like make eye contact to so many people, but you definitely can see at least the first rows or whatever. And so you can see how people are responding to what you're saying. Whereas teaching remotely, I don't think it's important for students to keep their cameras on because you don't know where they are or whatever, and I want everyone to be comfortable. But as a result, I don't know what people are saying. Brew and Learn launch as well. It was going to be difficult no matter when I did it, when faculty deal with it, and kind of like, okay, it's this giant class, and I have to learn how to do this. There's Brew and Learn tech people who have been enormously helpful. They have virtual office hours, and whenever I got stuck on setting something up, I could go and they would walk me through what I was doing wrong, which I appreciated a great deal.
Also, shout out to the TAs in this course. They were like awesome. Like the coolest TAs you could ever get from the musicology department. They were always typing in chat with everybody on Zoom and making horrible puns and jokes, and my TA was always like, you know what, honestly, I'm not really a fan of the Beatles. I don't really know them, but this is something we can just figure out together. So yeah, the TAs, and there were a lot of them because there were a lot of students and a lot of sections, they were awesome, and they were so just accommodating and supporting to all of the students.
I've gotten the most positive reviews, comments, whatever, of anything I've taught, and I've been here since 2002. So it's very gratifying to me to teach something that students are clearly enjoying. Also, with the arts GEs, we get a lot of students who are STEM students because they have to then take arts classes, and they work so hard. I think everyone deserves to have at least one class, I hope it's more than one, where you can just enjoy something. You can just think about your aesthetic response and spend some time with some music that is enjoyable. There is, I should say, anyone watching, there is real work. You have to spend time listening to music. You have to spend time thinking about it. There are things to read and things to take in, but none of it is calculus. So it's actually less onerous than many other difficult subjects can be. And there's got to be a place for that in college. You have to have exposure to a wide range of different topics because that's fun, right?
The third and last class I took was Digital Reconstructions on Broadway. It was Digital Humanities 150, and there's like a bunch of different 150s you could take, but this is the one I chose, and it was with Professor Caldwell. So before the quarter started, I emailed a bunch of professors asking, could you send me the syllabus beforehand to find out whether like I wanted to take some of these classes, and Professor Caldwell was one of the professors that I had emailed, and then he sent me like the draft syllabus, and I was like, oh my gosh, they teach 3D modeling in this course. And so I was so fascinated. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to learn that. I want to use 3D modeling. Maybe I could figure out how to use this in my videos. And I was just really interested because it's a skill I didn't have at all. I've never touched it at all. I don't know how to do it. I don't know where it starts. And so I was like, yes, I'm gonna learn something in this class. And you know how sometimes you sign up for classes and you're like, I think I'm gonna learn this, and then you don't end up learning it and you're like, what happened? I thought I was gonna learn this in this class, but I didn't learn anything. This was not that class. We learned it, and we really learned it. We really learned how to 3D model, and it was just like so much fun.
My name is Anthony Caldwell. I'm the Associate Director of the Digital Research Consortium at UCLA, which is a collection of different departments and programs that focus on research. So I run a collaborative lab. I am also, my background is architecture. This quarter was teaching a DH-150 titled Digital Reconstructions on Broadway, where we examined how cultural heritage preservation, specifically historic theaters in downtown LA, and we used 3D modeling as the method to explore those theaters.
Actually, initially, when I first read the title of the class, I thought Broadway meant theaters in Broadway, like New York. But come to find out, there's actually a Broadway in downtown LA with like a whole street of theaters that used to show movies, and it was like the spot to be before Hollywood happened. And so the class focused on 2 theaters by Charles S. Lee, which were the Los Angeles Theater and the Tower Theater. But it was really fun because the idea was to see things in 3D that either weren't built or are not there anymore, that have since been destroyed, or things that have been remodeled. So the class gave us a chance to create an experience using a 3D model that we can't experience otherwise. The very first class, Professor Caldwell lectured on, what is a digital reconstruction, how can we use these for research, and a bunch of history about Broadway in downtown LA itself. But after that, every week was just literally a tutorial. He would teach us in class how to use the tools, and we could follow along and learn how to do different things with the software. So he started out really, beginner, and then we work our way up and learn more and more things that we can do with the software. And we also had a week on photogrammetry, which is like super cool, blow my mind. I've only seen like one video of that before on YouTube, and I was like, I get to learn that in this class, and it was so much fun. You like take pictures of something all around an object, and you can just use your phone, like any camera at all, just any pictures, and you can take pictures all around an object, or even like take pictures of a building, and then you stick it in the software and it figures it out and creates a 3D model based on those 2D, or not 2D, but like based on those pictures. So that's super cool, and it's a way to just use any camera you have, and like we all have cameras in our smartphones now. You can use any camera you have to create a 3D model of anything you can see right into your computer. So that was like super fun to me. That was so cool.
Because this was an introduction course, it was largely about getting your feet wet and learning how to build 3D models. It was a difficult quarter because we were started completely online, and then halfway through the quarter we became in person, but there was still, I don't think it would have been possible to just say, okay, everybody comes back in person and we can't do hybrid. So really it became a hybrid quarter, which can be challenging to teach because you have to do all of the above. But for me, it was actually very natural. It was sort of, well, how do I explain modeling to people who haven't modeled before? Modeling applications, Vectorworks is a great example. Vectorworks is a lot like Photoshop in that it can be very intimidating. It does a whole lot of things, and it's not necessarily that obvious what it does and how it does it. So my approach to teaching 3D modeling has always been, well, let's just build something. Let's start with the tools that you need to solve the immediate problem, and then we can talk about how those tools can be extended or expanded in different ways. So it became very obvious to me up front that I would need to do tutorials, and normally I've done tutorials in a class environment, but I realized that having recordings are extremely important, and they also are different.
I think initially GIS was on the syllabus as well, but we didn't end up learning that because he decided it would be better to teach us more 3D modeling. But overall, the class is just so useful. I really felt like I was learning practical skills every week. Not that I really think that 3D modeling will be exactly practical to me in my life, but it didn't feel like we were like studying academic and intellectual thoughts and reading long academic papers for no reason that don't help me. So in terms of the coursework, there were 5 mini-tech projects throughout the quarter. It was mostly one every week, and then not towards the end of the quarter. There was like 1 or 2 weeks skipped in there or something. But basically each week he would give us just a really basic project so that we could apply the tutorial that we had learned in class and just turn in proof that we had, tried out the skill and learned how to do it at a basic level. And so as long as you were invested in what we were learning and following along with class, those are completely no problem. And then the only other grade in the class was our final project, which was a group project. You work with maybe 4 or 5 different other people and put together kind of a mini research project and use the tools and techniques we learned in class and just present it at the end of class. And that was really it.
Well, it's fun, as you pointed out. I think I tried to keep it fun because it could be, there are different ways of teaching different styles, but I sort of like a more open approach. This course gives you something that you learn that you may not know before, but also I think the environment should be conducive to learning that and not be, over the top. So I think that's the appeal. I think you can use it in a variety of different approaches and disciplines. I just think it's a really good, especially in the world that we're going into, which is becoming more visual, more 3D. I mean, there are the boundaries between the types of material that you can work with and the disciplines that work with that material. If you look at it, it's all over the place now. It used to be very specific disciplines, use very specific tools to produce very specific results. But especially in the DH program, I like to say the DH program has very fuzzy edges, and that disciplines overlap and the information moves back and forth, which is as it should be. So this is just another tool. This is another tool that has some very relatively interesting implications. And when combined with things like text, or combined with movies, or combined with a number of other things, can be very powerful.
So again, super thankful for this class. The assignments were helpful. There was nothing useless. I feel like I learned something new, and it was so interesting. And then just to top it all off, to go 3 for 3 on like awesome professors, which is, a hard thing to get in 1 quarter. Professor Caldwell was also really adapting to the hybrid environment where we had people come in person, and he was also broadcasting on Zoom to everybody, and there would be a recording. And all the tutorials he did in class, he also had tutorials recorded separately on how to do that. So like you would have 2 copies on how to do something so you could really figure it out. And if anyone ever had a question in class on like how to do something, he would just film another tutorial and put it up on the class page for us. And we also had a new CMS to adjust to, which was Brew and Learn. This was the first time they had launched it to everybody, and none of my professors ever had a hitch with technical difficulties. They were all so committed to figuring out the best technological solutions to how we could all learn in class. And so it just really blew my mind that I got like 3 amazing professors. So overall, when I first opened my syllabuses or syllabi at the beginning of the quarter, I couldn't believe it. Like I was like, I have no midterms in any of these classes. I have no final exams in any of these classes. My COMM class wants me to make a project that is useful and interesting to me. My Beatles class just wants me to write a 5-page essay on something that I think is cool. And my Digital Humanities class wants us to do a group project using 3D modeling to research something we find interesting. None of the silly like memorize something and write it down on the test, or like write me a 12-page essay showing that you read all these long readings. I don't know exactly when these classes will be offered again next, but if you ever do have the opportunity to take these classes or to study with these professors, I really recommend it. And this combination of 3 classes and really the correct workload for college really laid the foundation for me having a fantastic quarter overall in life and having room to do the things I wanted to do and invest in other friends and activities. Well, it's been a while since I did a college vlog. Really busy with other videos, almost out of college, So I don't know how many more like college stuff there's gonna be, but I hope you enjoyed today's video and stick around for more coming soon. Oh my gosh, it's a tufted titmouse. It's so pretty. You're so cute. Okay, sorry.